We've got tons of things to look forward to for the next 18 months, both, PulseChain centric and chain agnostic. And I would say it's going to really be interoperable. So the thing about the Tang Gang is I understand it can be intimidating for folks to learn new things, and learning multiple new things is probably a lofty goal to lay onto somebody. But the system that we're building, it kind of doesn't matter what entry point you find into the Tang Gang. The entire system is reflexive and complementary to the respective ancillary pieces. So you'll get to have a different experience with the Tang Gang than you're going to have in most other engagements on social media, because X is primarily a platform where tasteless shilling is the primary dish served daily, which is good for flash in the pan attention, but it does not lead to sustainable growth or adoption of new technologies or new education. So, and gang, we have to do things a little bit differently, and we have to just build really hard to create a system where pretty much any participation leads to the desired outcome that serves the best interest of individuals and a growing collective. So what I'm most excited for is our expansion as a collective. We've dominated the ability to produce a signal on the blockchain in the form of the HEX orange address token that has shown there's a group of people more interested in building than they are in the fast money of turning around and selling a bag on somebody, as evidenced by the over 110 days of tremendous performance from a speculative point of view, just a price token on the blockchain. But as a collective, we've done some really interesting things, formulating a patronage model whereby people are incentivized to provide liquidity with our ecosystem assets, which is fundamentally different than the traditional FOMO event of, hey, tell your buddy to buy as much of this thing as they can as fast as possible, so that when the other people follow that behavior, we can maximize the amount of money that we take from them. Obviously, that's a one win, many lose dynamic, and it's not something that we're interested in. We're more interested in win-win-win scenarios, whereby the more effort you put in, the more reward you stand to gain. And we sustain that by deepening the liquidity with which the entire ecosystem can service the interest of speculation, which is ultimately the buys and sells that will hit the chart. And we do so by incorporating a social layer and programmatic layers, software layers, that allow us to maintain insulated value while patronizing worthy causes, whether it be individuals that deserve elevating their platform because they have brilliant ideas that the world needs to hear, or they have art that the world needs to see, or they have protocols that would benefit the world, optimize the world, whatever it might be. We as a collective have ways of utilizing our social layer to signal opportunity within our tokenized economy, the Tang Gang leverages, as well as the blockchain in general. And so we do it like this. We demand the highest standard of excellence. You have to create objectively dank works, whether it's memes, artwork, protocols, or immersive experiences. And then not only do you have to produce to a standard of excellence, you are expected to give that excellence away for free to the Tang Gang. Not in its entirety, but some tribute of your elevated abilities, your talents, your objective skill needs to be paid tribute to the Tang Gang for free, because we want people to have the lowest barrier to entry, and that is also respective to the benefits that people can expect to earn participating in this community. So the Tang Gang gets things for free, and they are objectively phenomenal pieces of art or useful protocols or an experience that you can't get anywhere else. We then are able to elevate those platforms of creators to amplify their opportunities to drive sales and revenue. And we then encourage them to bring a portion of their amplified revenue from our collective, blowing up their messages, blowing up their brand, memeing the timeline, drawing attention to them, and circulate some of that amplified revenue back to a market buy of our HOA token, which set that initial signal. That alone has proven to be a very successful model for us, but we've taken it a step further, continuing to insulate the amount of value captured on the blockchain by leveraging the Pussycat Life team, a development team that has a yield farm on PulseChain that we colloquially call the Pussycat Farms. And they utilize a decentralized exchange on PulseChain that has a long-term incentive program to turn users into owners of the protocol's revenue in the form of the fees generated across the entire branded suite of protocols. The suite of protocols is delivered by another development team called 9MM. They have a fully doxed lead dev, 𝘰𝘓𝘓, in real life doctor, trying to bring capital efficiency to PulseChain. And he has a super equitable way for people to justify taking a risk on providing liquidity on platforms. And that is a 20-month schedule of distribution of the fixed supply of the 9MM branded token, only to ever exist on PulseChain, and it will receive the fees to be distributed among 9MM token stakers with aspirations of multi-chain deployment. So you're talking about having effectively Uniswap v3 on multiple blockchains, and all of the fees from all of the exchanges and all of the NFT marketplaces and whatever other products they might build, all the fees get channeled back through the singular token back on 9MM. This is important because it incentivizes liquidity providers on PulseChain to provide liquidity on a capital efficient platform that has superior benefits to the alternatives that currently exist on the chain. In addition to that, it gives us an actual cash flow on the blockchain, because fees on 9MM can only be accrued from actual on-chain activity, usage of the protocols. So rather than just the sheer speculative nature of tokens, we actually have a backstop in the form of a large representation in the 9MM distribution of tokens through our patronage of PulseOG NFTs that were launched by the 9MM team, 100 allocated for free to the Tang Gang. That's an example of the tribute free protocol revenue opportunity handed out. And to show you how important amplification of platforms are, the world was so unaware of the brands at that time that only 70 of the 100 allocated free NFTs were actually claimed by Tang Gang members. That means there were 30 NFTs that have a guaranteed distribution of 9MM tokens over a 20-month window that were just left up for grabs because people were not aware of the opportunity. Since then, the entire 5,555 piece collection has minted out because of the rapid spread of awareness. How does Pussycat Farms continue to play into this model? We empower our patrons and our creators and the providers of liquidity in our ecosystem through a social layer whereby we price digital artifacts in the reward token of our yield farm. How do we do this? When artists want to set a price for their work, we ask that they set that as priced in the reward token from our yield farm, which is called OG. It stands for Orange Grove. Shout out the Pussycat Farms for making their reward token the Orange Grove incentive token. So because the price is only really relevant at the point of exchange, it's when I give you the money, the value of the money at that point is when it's most relevant with regard to the price of your work. So at the social layer, we select the fiat equivalent price that we are targeting for a sale in art. We then either set that as the required price in OG and allow the public to have access at a higher price, a premium price, for not paying in the reward token, or you simply set that target price and then reduce that target and price OG at a lower level if you want to give a steeper discount, right? And so by doing this, we create kind of an osmosis effect on chain whereby people who were already interested in patronizing artists and protocol developers now have an incentive to just pay in an alternative currency whereby they give up almost any alternative to save money when paying in this OG token. So we've now created a social layer that complements this programmatic layer, trustless yield paid on a time basis, a yield farm that pays out a reward every block that is signed on the blockchain. digital artifacts from highly talented individuals who have already given their talents for free to the Tang Gang, amplified with an army of mimetic marketing that's able to reach a much broader audience, amplified revenue with an incentive to swap your currencies into what is just a complement on top of liquidity provider fees in the form of our OG yield farm incentive token. And then we've gone even further. So if you have wrapped your head around any of that, you should just know that's kind of like a DeFi yield farm market through and through. On its own, it's a phenomenal value proposition. It insulates a lot of the value that's often lost in the form of heat, transaction costs, validator expense, etc. But now the Tang Gang is leveraging even more of the creative spectrum, where we have, just savants like 𝘭𝘢𝘺𝘔𝘓 and Rentomania, full stack developers who are able to produce in the metaverse. Think Mana produces AR and VR art, and now we have developers who are able to build AR and VR environments. And Rentomania, which is a PulseChain project that has been on testnet, is on mainnet, has been around. They were patronizing my Twitter spaces under previous accounts, always coming in, listening, supporting. They too have a yield farm and have agreed to form a dual farm along with Pussycat Farms, where the reward token of the Rentomania ecosystem and the reward token of the Pussycat Farm system will be paired in a liquidity pool, V2 liquidity pool on the 9mm platform, thus earning points toward the 9mm monthly leaderboard, which will become a distribution of 9MM tokens, which we discussed as the revenue share token of the protocol suite. And you will have a farm in Pussycat Farms that is also OG and the reward token of Rentomania, which is called Enigma. And so in Pussycat Farms, you'll be earning OG, and in the Enigma Diamond Mines, you'll be earning Enigma for pairing up the reward token of each farm. And so you now have an alternative to simply using OG as a patronizing token for discounts to digital artifacts, because there's an opportunity cost of, would you spend the OG you already have, or would you rather rack up more points, which will become cash flow earning tokens of the 9MM protocol? There will be zero deposit fees on both farms, and so you can continue to compound for only the cost of PulseChain gas, increased exposure to both Enigma and OG in the form of a growing liquidity pool on 9MM. The same way that we have weaponized OG to become an osmosis discount token, we are able to utilize the unit bias, inflation rate, and distribution of the Rentomania yield farm ecosystem to provide a new layer of benefits, which have been highlighted in success by Mana, who recently minted out a phase of PulseCats by offering early minter access to individuals who owned a piece of a previous collection she had minted called Grove Girls that have a special trait where the Grove Girls are wearing a VR headset. If you own a Grove Girl with a VR headset, you were in the doors 15 minutes early, able to mint a PulseCat NFT. Most artists don't have a bunch of collections already on the blockchain. Most aspiring artists, I should say. And so it's difficult to be able to leverage gamification and excitement without that body of work. And so the Enigma Diamond Mines offer an opportunity to create status. Imagine the benefits of, while I may not have a collection with a VR headset that I can point to and say, hey, that gets you 15 minutes early doors. Imagine holding 1,000 Enigma diamonds or more gets you 15-minute early access to this collection's minting, and paying an OG gets you 20% price deduction from the public cost. You now have use cases for holding on to these tokens. There's a reason that these tokens would not be easy to just market sell, other than from speculators who are willing to increase their edge by deepening the amounts that they're buying and selling on either end of volatility. But ultimately, the liquidity between OG and Enigma becomes extremely deep due to the compounding, repetitive nature and incentivized program of combining the two in liquidity. And they are both low token supply, low emission. The OG token is more scarce than Bitcoin. There's less than 21 million OG, and there are less than 1 million Enigma. As of the last 48 hours, there's only one new OG token minted per block, and there's only 0.25 Enigma diamonds minted per block, distributed among all the pairs in these yield farm protocols. The Rentomania team is so behind the Tang Gang that they're willing to throttle their yield farm to provide roughly 50% of the total emissions to the Enigma Diamond OG pair. So of the 0.25 Enigma diamonds minted per block, roughly half of that goes to whoever wants to provide liquidity between Enigma and OG, which again is a dual farm opportunity where you can pair the two tokens together in 9mm V2 liquidity. It will provide you LP tokens, which represent your ownership of the two assets in the pool. You can split those LP tokens in half and provide half of those to the farm on Enigma and half of them to the Pussycat farms, earning both sides of the pair through just the emissions, not even any trading fees that might swap between OG and Enigma or any of the multi-hop routes that flow through on 9mm, but also getting to deposit that for your points, taking away sell pressure, deepening liquidity on what can be socially enforced as an increasing value proposition for both OG and Enigma due to the forms of social status, digital artifact discounts, teaching these creators how to use V3 single-sided liquidity to sell into buys, and then having Enigma as a status symbol, which rewards you for just accumulating some balance and then holding it for the long term, scaling out with the emissions of farms, as well as with the social layer of the creators. We have fully Croissant, who can deploy custom assets in the metaverse. Rentomania can deploy full Unity stack-based games. We can combine these things to provide modular entertainment in the metaverse in the form of game shows, television, ads, and marketing. All of this and more, utilizing the token economy to price assets and various exposures and benefits, will have a leg up on every other DeFi ecosystem. All of this is backstopped, if for nothing else, if you don't buy a JPEG, if you don't get an avatar, if you don't play the game, if you don't provide liquidity. The last one's a big mistake because you're about to have a PulseChain gas cost basis for increasing ownership of a cash flow positive protocol in perpetuity on possibly multiple chains and with multiple protocols feeding the fees. And it's the most capital efficient protocol on at least the blockchain it's deployed on currently. That's a steep proposition for me to fade. So I'm incentivized to possibly do the dual farm compound play because I know I can afford the cost of gas on PulseChain at least. That shit's like less than a penny per time. So if I have to do 2 harvests, an LP deposit, split the LP across 2 farms, that's 3 or 4 gas fees, and that's less than a nickel. So I can afford this strategy. And so that gives everybody, all walks of life, an equal opportunity for the cost of PulseChain gas. You can become an owner of a cash flow positive protocol that will pay you in layer 1 coins in perpetuity for staking the token that you will receive for the cost of gas if you have access to both of these reward tokens. If you're a little bit bigger into the metaverse, you will have first dibs access as well as a voice in the development and the expansion of our multifaceted skill base with regard to what games do the people want to see, what features do the people need in the games, what assets are people willing to incorporate from the blockchain into a game like Rentomania, what other games do we want to build, kind of stuff. So we have all of that right here in the Tang Gang. You can go to hexawaycoin.com. You won't see our Enigma OG farms up yet, but that will be going live in a matter of days. And at that point, you have to ask yourself how much you're willing to risk on the next pump and dump, which you know is not sustainable for many of the reasons I've outlined in this rant, or if you just want to pay the price of gas to increase your exposure to what you know is guaranteed cash flows from a protocol that's being used by more than just the Tang Gang and will continue to